The heart, mediastinum, pulmonary vascularity, pleural spaces, and bones appear normal. New paragraph. Hello?
Is this Dr. Lori Barr?
Yes?
This is the nurse practitioner in the Eliza Coffey Memorial Hospital emergency room. Your parents have been in a motor vehicle accident. I have your mother here, and she's experiencing amnesia, but she knew enough to tell me to call you, and your phone number was in her purse. I don't know about your father's condition. He was life-flighted directly to the Huntsville hospital from the accident scene.
Welcome to the Doctor's Mentor Show. If you believe that medicine is an industry and not a profession, if you enjoy submitting complex reimbursement claims, or you would do another residency just for fun, be advised, you're about to be offended. You should probably leave now. If you love assisting patients with vitality breakthroughs, if the right to practice medicine without interference is important, and you want expert tips for practice freedom and profits to support your epic life, welcome aboard and prepare to be blown away. The Doctor's Mentor Show starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Lori Barr.
There's only one other time in my life that I felt like I dropped into a Twilight Zone episode. That was the time I woke up alone in the dark in the middle of the night in a big house to something calling my name from the foot of my bed. That's a story for another episode, or perhaps even another podcast. It's good to be back, offering you, as my protege, tips to maximize your practice satisfaction and your opportunity for a rich, full life with those you love. This episode is designed to leave you with 5 vital steps to help you prepare for the unthinkable. Preparation allows you to gain the most from this kind of growth opportunity rather than just being devastated by overwhelm. You see, the morning I received that call, it was New Year's Eve, and I was sitting at Dell Children's Medical Center in Austin, Texas, in my office, reading x-rays because I was on call. And that call wasn't the first on-call call I was expecting that morning. Usually it would be one of our assistants letting me know that there was a stat read on a neonatal study from a hospital other than the one I was sitting at, or perhaps one of the pediatric hospitalists or ER docs needing an emergency upper GI to evaluate a patient for malrotation and midgut volvulus. That call from the Eliza Coffey Memorial Hospital nurse practitioner changed our lives forever. Thank goodness I'd had a number of mentors who over the years had given me tips that assisted me in being prepared for my family's moment of crisis. Here's what I learned from them. 5 vital steps for being prepared for the unthinkable. The V in vital is for verify. Verify that your family members are totally prepared for a brush with or actual death. This means actually investing in a meeting with an estate planner and making sure that you have a will at a minimum or a full-blown estate plan if your family and your family's holdings are sufficient to justify the cost. This also means thinking about what you want to happen if you or a loved one is at a crossroads where there is a question about continuing life support or not. It's one thing to start thinking about this and another thing to put it in writing. Follow through so your family doesn't feel like you left them with no guidance. Cremation or burial, viewing or not, is there already a burial or cremation policy that you don't know about? Has a resting place been purchased? How do you access these things? In my case, I'm an only child raised by a United States Coast Guard officer, Sonny Barr, and his wife, Lee Barr, a world-renowned speech pathologist and audiologist. My father had planned for disaster since he first enlisted in the Coast Guard. My mother learned the drill as soon as they wed. Both were happy as independent, successful humans who enjoyed times they shared together and times of solitude. They thought of almost everything when it comes to a brush with death, except a scenario that compromised them both at the exact same time. They were great mentors to me in this and so many other aspects of my life. The I in vital is for identify. Identify any weaknesses in your emergency scaffolding. By this I mean take a look at the people around you, your workplace environment, and your pooled resources. Are you on sure footing in your practice or workplace where you know for certain you could provide a family member with the same level of love and support you give to your patients if an emergency called you away on short notice? Do you have at least one practice partner who absolutely has your back no matter what, and you have theirs in return? Do you understand who to contact if you need to leave your responsibilities unannounced in the hands of another provider? Is your practice or employer equipped with a mechanism that allows you to use family leave if necessary? You need to understand how family leave actually works in your practice setting. In some cases, you may be considered essential personnel, and thus your employer may not have to consider you for family leave. Your training may cause your injured or sick family member's doctor to make medical decisions based on your availability, and if you're then not available, this can lead to problems. For example, a loved one suffers a head injury and is deemed to have a concussion. Under average circumstances, they might be observed for 24 hours in a hospital or acute care environment to assure no deterioration in neurological status occurs. Yet, since you are a doctor, their provider decides it will be even better for them to go home with you where they can get more rest and you can still do the neurology checks in a kinder, gentler, and less expensive way. That's all great until you have to go to work during that same 24-hour period. In my case, in this situation with my parents, as soon as I got off the phone with the nurse practitioner from the ER, I called my practice partner that I knew would know exactly what to do in this scenario. I told her what I knew, and I said, "What do I do now?" She said, "You book a plane to leave as soon as possible, and I take a shower and come to the hospital." Honestly, until you've experienced something like this, you really don't know how much it means to know someone has your back. I am forever grateful to all my practice partners at Austin Radiological Association who assisted me by taking my call, selling me their vacation, switching shifts, and bending over backwards to make sure I could take care of my folks. In my case, I had both an extremely favorable practice setting and people who had my back. Now let's talk about resources. Do you and your family have enough insurance coverage and emergency funds set aside to deal with disability or death? How accessible is it, and what is your process? You'll need cash, and you might need credit. You may need legal assistance. I was glad I had listened to my mentor, Mike Koenigs, who years ago suggested that I determine my fiscally unfettered number, or as he said, FU number. The amount of money you need to accumulate to have the freedom to leave any work or practice situation that is no longer serving you. Depending upon the emergency, you might actually have to give notice to your current practice or employer. Are you fiscally ready for that? Are you emotionally ready for that? We who practice the arts as physicians, nurses, chiropractors, lawyers, and other credentialed professionals tend to overly identify with our titles and roles. That can lead to unnecessary stress if a job change is required to maximize your support as your family faces a crisis. The FU number may change during different points in your career, so be prepared to revisit this as time passes. The T in VITAL is for talk. Talk before an emergency like this happens so the action plan is easier to implement. Talk even more after something like this happens. Effective closed-loop communication is essential in preparation for an untimely emergency and assures your loved one gets the care they need. It is worth your time to talk to your family about what you would do if there is a local disaster or if someone is seriously injured. Have a written action plan with the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. Make sure the plan and important information like medication lists and insurance cards are readily available. My favorite tool for this is Evernote. It's available on all mobile devices and on laptop computers and desktops. It's easy to create and upload notes, take note, and to share notes. We have a family library we share. The OCR reader is excellent so that even if your notes are handwritten or you take a picture of something and there's a word or a number embedded in a picture, the search tool will find that note. It's pretty amazing. In our case, the paramedics on the scene did an incredible job keeping each of my parents' possessions with them so they had what they needed when they needed it in each of the 2 hospitals they were in, roughly 70 miles apart. I was able to notify my aunt and cousin who assisted my mother in one town and another cousin who assisted my father until I could arrive about 7 hours later. The A in VITAL is for allow. Allow your training as a healthcare provider to assist you as you order your immediate action steps. You've been trained to take your own pulse first when there is a healthcare emergency, and the same serves you in this instance. The hospital is like Disneyland. You wouldn't dream of letting a small child go to Disneyland by themselves. Consider the same with a hospital or convalescent care facility. Both are busy places, and while the care team wants the best for their patients, there is a difference between what the customer experiences and what the employees live day after day to make the magic happen. As a healthcare professional, you most likely understand this more than your siblings who have other professions. A simple tip like, wear warm clothes and bring an extra blanket, hospitals are usually cold, can make a difference. Your insider knowledge can be instrumental in improving the outcome for your loved one. For example, you may understand how different care teams make rounds and at what time. You can prepare a list of questions or have whomever is at the bedside call you when the care team arrives for rounds. This is how errors are prevented and tests get done without falling through the cracks. The L in vital is for love. Love those who are ailing and yourself with every fiber and vibration that is your being. Any unexpected challenge like this is an opportunity to reflect on the following question. For what have I exchanged my short life up until this point? You may find yourself too devoted to your profession or inwardly focused on a challenge in your own life. Nothing like a family emergency to shift your focus outward on the needs of those who mean the most to you in this world. This is an opportunity to realign yourself with the real reason you are here on earth right now. Remember, in a situation like this, everyone is ailing and everyone is doing the best they can to cope, using coping mechanisms they currently have, so everyone needs to be cut some slack. That includes you. Cut yourself some slack if you feel guilty about how you left a relationship that is now forever changed. You may feel sad for your loss and scared or confused by the unknown. Usually you feel these emotions and even more emotions. This is where loving habits you've created prior to the emergency can really comfort you. In our case, our habit of reading the Bible together every night as a family continued through my parents' convalescence. We used an iPad so that we could all be together for this and for prayer, even though my parents remained 70 miles apart for several weeks. Vital. Verify, identify, talk, allow, and love. 5 simple preparation steps that I, as your mentor, suggest you take before an emergency so that you and your family grow closer through the experience with less distress. Let's continue our journey together toward a different type of professional life, one that gives you maximum satisfaction as you care for your patients and clients, and maximum opportunity for a rich, full life with those you love. I'm Dr. Lori Barr, the doctor's mentor. One idea is all it takes to change your world.
You're listening to The Doctor's Mentor, hosted by Dr. Lori Lee Barr. Podcast content is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purposes of curing, diagnosing, preventing, or treating any disease or medical condition. Information found or received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare, legal, or accounting professional. If you suspect you have a medical problem or you should have any healthcare questions, please promptly call or see your healthcare provider. Carefully read all labels and heed all directions and cautions that accompany products or services. Before using any strategies, activities, or products referenced in this podcast, consult with your lawyer, accountant, or medical professional. The Doctor's Mentor was created by Dr. Lori Lee Barr. It is owned by Peak Idea, LLC, executive producer, Dr. Stephen Dent, audio-video engineer, Richard Dent. The company, Dr. Lori Lee Barr, and the producers disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about the qualifications or credibility of guests. Opinions of Dr. Lori Lee Barr are her own. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements from products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services mentioned. Remember, one idea is all it takes to change your world.
There's more to explore at thedoctorsmentor.com.